All right, Dennis, thanks so much for being here and going over your data. You I think, a total of 5 sessions for our Hellfire Council of Nine project. You're very prolific. And of course, we're going to have you share your screen and go over your session data. Before we do, I'd love to get some background about you, whatever you'd like to cover, but definitely specific as it relates to remote viewing and anything else in terms of your background.
Sure. Great. Thanks, Darby. My journey has been a very interesting one. I've been interested in remote viewing since I was about 17, 18 years old when I
Oh,
first
wow.
read Courtney Brown's book, Cosmic
Hmm.
Voyage. And I said, I want to do that. And it took me a long time to, I think, just with the synchronicities of life to connect to where I am. But as a result of reading that book, I ended up joining the military and spent some time in military intelligence as a counterintelligence agent and an intelligence analyst. I had one deployment over my belt, came home, did the law enforcement thing as a cop for a while, and then realized this is the impact I want to have on the world. So I became a teacher, and I've taught in high needs schools as a special education teacher. I now find myself at a Waldorf charter school where I'm the assistant dean of students. So that's been my professional background. I moonlight as an author and a podcast host where I've been taking my deep dives and my learning and really trying to understand all of these experiences that I've had and the experiences of others and just have conversations with people to try to explore the nature of our reality has been a big pondering of mine as it ties into my big themes have been the impact of artificial intelligence on human consciousness and the UFO presence among us as well. And they all kind of converge at the same point. As for remote viewing, I got a call in the night from a mysterious voice with the crypto viewing team a few years back, thanks to my connections with Edward Reardon. He was a guest on my podcast and got pulled into crypto as the host and interviewer. And through that process is where I connected with Daz Smith, and he offered to train me. And the rest is history. I'm still learning. I'm still very much a student. You can watch me make my mistakes on YouTube. I put them up there as a learning opportunity to share with people out there. But it's been a lot of fun. It's been, that journey, the introspection you get from remote viewing has just been incredible for me. So I'm happy to be working with you, Darby. I've enjoyed the projects we've done together, and this is a really neat project. So I'm looking forward to getting into the data.
Yeah, I did a project. You tasked a project not too long ago on some of that. Well, I guess it was on the Roswell
Mm-hmm.
crash and
Yeah,
the effect of what was recovered on humanity. I'm not sure if that was the exact tasking, but got into
roughly.
a lot of
Yeah,
that. And so, yeah, you have a great, really interesting background, both
thank you.
professionally and then what you're doing now with remote viewing and your podcast. One thing that occurred to me, you said that you kind of got your interest in remote viewing with Courtney Brown's book, and I don't know, you probably know this because you work with Naeem more than I do with crypto viewing, but he that was kind of his launching point as well. He
Yeah,
found Courtney Brown's book in, I think, his middle school library,
yeah,
and he picked it up and he read it, and I guess that struck a nerve, and eventually things circled back around.
yeah. It's
That was
it's neat.
interesting.
It's a neat connection that we share with that journey. And I think that's the neat thing about being an author is, you put these books out there not knowing what impact you're going to have on somebody who reads it. That could be 10, 20, 30, 50 years down the road. Somebody picks that up and is inspired. And that's such a neat gift to leave behind for people. And it's really, for me, it's just therapy writing about these things that seem so intense at the time, getting it out and trying to understand it. So it's neat that we share that in
Hmm.
common.
Yeah, Courtney Brown. He's definitely probably responsible for my introduction to remote viewing as well. Maybe
Yeah.
through Cosmic, his books. I've
Mm-hmm.
definitely read both of them, and of course Farsight. Uh, with Dick and Daz's series of Mystery
Yeah.
Project interviews.
It's
So
amazing. I remember watching Dick and Daz on Farsight and going, "Oh my gosh, that's
yeah.
so amazing! I would love to learn to do that one day." And I remember I downloaded Courtney's course, and it didn't work for me. It was too regimented. It was too
Mm.
structured, and that's not for everybody. It just didn't work for me.
Hmm.
Because they were talking about the importance of like a perfectly clean space, nothing in your room, all white plain colored walls, and like I'm a messy, like my desk has stuff, and I was like, there's no way I can clear my mind enough to do a remote viewing. And then, so fortunately, when I met with Daz, he's like, nah, dude, that's okay. I do remote viewing on the bus sometimes. So it's
Yeah,
like, all
right.
right, that fits more my style. 'Cause I got three
Yeah.
kids, and everything's always a mess. So different styles of the process.
No, I hear you on that. I walked through that as well, and I just decided to adhere to the philosophy of take what you like and leave the rest. And I think
Yeah.
that's what we all need to do to
Yeah.
some degree.
Yep.
Um,
Absolutely.
my desk is not clear.
They say it's a sign of genius. I've heard a messy desk. So I'm like, wow, I must be really smart some days.
Well, we have. I want to share your different URLs with people, your podcast URL, and of course, what you do with CryptoV. And we'll do that at the end. Of course, it'll be
Okay.
in the video and podcast description as well. But let's get into this wonderful data that you shared with everybody that you viewed for the project and
Sure.
start going over it.
Now, I have to say, I have horrible handwriting to everybody out there. Um, so after this project, I've gotten the habit of things that are being presented, because I typed up my notes for this one too, I believe, didn't I, Darby? Which I'm not going to share today. I'll read my handwriting today, but
Yes,
uh,
you created self reflections for every session.
yeah. Um, but I've also gotten in the habit now of just adding typed text for my product, just trying to keep my work a little bit more consumable. But I've also, after I've been on this planet 42 years now, I've been actually taking my time and trying to refine my handwriting, specifically for remote viewing, so it comes out a lot neater. But so we'll see though. When you're in state, things get a little sloppy anyway. But I'll take any help I can get with my
Yeah.
handwriting. There's my disclaimer. Okay, so this was my first session here. I just felt a little anxiety going into it, but I think that was just a little performance anxiety coming through. So my low level data here, through all of these sessions, I think some of the general themes that I got were things with energetics, and I had a theme that seemed like an influence that felt almost like an abduction that we'll go through. This rolling movement of energy and these two societies and kind of their influence on one another. And it was really neat seeing how these societies, the one I got into the structure of it. So it was really neat to watch that. As I go through the data, I'm sure I'll be triggered with more memories of it. So I'll go through the low level stuff kind of quick. I'm not going to go through point by point, but I'm starting to get here this structure with a traveler. I had the moon as an AOL, and I just got this sense that whatever I was looking at was really big. And I felt movement. I got the word vibration and space sounds. So I had something that was external from the planet. Then I'm getting lines, geodescent. I'm starting to get this here with this movement and these energetics and these lines here and this structure. And here I'm starting to get energy, this energy system that I'm looking at. And I probed it and I have the data on that on the next page. But again, low level, just the sounds and the feelings of it, metallic sounds, lots of energy. So if you look at A here, this top portion was concave. So I think I'm getting early elements of like a toroidal shape here.
Mm-hmm.
And then B, that was referring to just all of these lines were some kind of a barrier. And then boom, I get hit with, wow, this is energy. And then just this line with the blue glow around it. It was a strong energy coming off of this, almost painful, like it was defensive. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt that maybe it was trying to keep me out. I never know if that's just what I wrote. I never know if that's part of my imagination. Hey, I'm being kept out of this, or if that's something that's really happening, especially this early in the session. But I felt excited by it, trying to understand it. So I looked at it from above, from that concave, and I saw this toroidal shape. I can never say that word. And just this energetic field, geodesic dome, and the movement of energy was going up and down, moving in both directions. Passage of energy, buzzing sounds, bubbling. It was exciting. And then I had this like phrase in my head. This is human energy. I feel like this is connected to or related to a structure. It has an energetic component, a passageway, or a doorway. And then I start getting this shape here, this radiating orb of energy here. It was glowing on a dark background. It was neon, electrified, pulsing, energized, electrified, time consuming, like a time capsule, information data storage. And I saw Da Vinci's Man, and this came back in a few sessions
Mm-hmm.
that overlaid on my page 4 sketch. So if we go back here, I saw this sketch again, and then I saw that it was related to this. So I felt that I was getting an image of human energy systems very early on to this. And it's just a rough sketch. I mean, I'm a terrible artist anyway, but just a rough sketch of it. And then I started seeing these sacred geometric shapes. And then this is where it got really weird. I saw this structure with these, I'll call them tendrils or antenna, or just coming out of it with this background of geodesic shapes. Now, I didn't draw them, but the whole background had these shapes behind this structure. It almost kind of looks like some kind of weird heart. And I even labeled it the dark heart. This
Mm-hmm.
is dark and I don't like it, was the AOL that I had. It was like a foreign body invading the space, sending its tendrils out to all of the surrounding cells. The cells look like sacred geometry upon inspection. The closer one gets, the more details we see. Now, I had an AOL of COVID because COVID is so prevalent, but this
Yeah.
felt almost like like a almost parasitic. And I caution myself when I make those statements because of that could easily be my conscious mind given some of the content that I explore and write about. But I declared it anyway just to get it out there. But this I didn't like what I was perceiving there, so I took a break again because I was afraid I was going to go off into AOL land. It was a short, very short break. I'm back a minute later, but I had to just disconnect. And there it is again. And now it's the same shape, but it's energized. And I see this energy going into it and all around of it, as if the energy strikes it, fills it, and charges it. It was hot, intense, dense, thick, slow moving with low sounds. And I had the sense that it was healing as an AOL. So, what's the most important about this aspect? It was just an object moving through space. And I had an AOL of Oumuamua, which was that object that came from another galaxy,
Mm-hmm.
with another solar system, excuse me, I think, and passed into our own.
Mm-hmm.
Rumbling sounds, hard, thick, something in the center. It feels pure, peace, and hard. Moving into S4, again, just hard, fuzzy, rotational, round, oblong, awkward, rotational, rocky, light, burst. So just describing this object moving through space, movement of light, trajectory, path, pattern, and signal. What's most interesting to me, it was transient, it was fixed, but it was a wanderer, functional, and some kind of opposition. I took a break and I'm back. And then this is the first of a few times that I saw these objects here. Now, I think when I first saw this, I saw just rows and rows and rows of them, and I only drew a few. Oddly
Mm-hmm.
enough, though, I drew 9 of them,
Yeah.
like a row of cards. I mean, and that ties into the tasking, right? The
Mm-hmm.
Council of Nine. I had, was it scales, hard, compressed, but individual and independent. Seeing these shapes with an energetic streak above them could be life forms. So this was neat. This was now, I suspect it was life forms on the ground and just looking up at this energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an AOL of Aurora Borealis. An experience almost has a spiritual or religious feel. And I think I get into this in another session,
Mm-hmm.
probing this experience more. And I started getting apocalyptic themes. Doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
the world's going to end, but apocalyptic in the sense of just major change that these people were looking at. And I'll get into that data moving forward. Oh, maybe I get into it here. Okay. Extinction event, arrival. The above energy is in motion as if it moves across and flashes in the distance. But I also perceived it as a rolling energy like the Borealis. What's most important to the tasker? The energy, the movement of energy, sparks, sparkling, moving. And I felt, is this the direction that it took? It came over, went down, and then shot up again. Okay. And then some S5, looking at the word trajectory, light form, movement, thought, and airways. Now this is interesting because I was listening to some of, I haven't read all of the raw material. I've been familiar with it as I hear other speakers talk about it. But I haven't felt drawn to dive into it until this project. So I'm starting to consume those materials now. But one of the things that they were talking about in the very early chapters was that, they're not going to force this information on people but if people align their thinking and their meditations in a certain frequency, then this information will be brought to them. So I think that's what I'm touching on here, is our thought process is what harmonizes with whatever frequency of data is out there to pull them in.
Mm-hmm.
and then back to trajectory, movement, wave, wave-like, wave pattern, form, formulation, and then creation, which felt pretty strong here. And it was planetary. These are AOLs, but it was planetary, worldwide, and global, just this large scale thought form. And I looked at pattern, the word pattern, ominous, omniverse, which is a word I've never heard before, but um, multiplicity, changing, replicating, and originating. Movement, elusive, sacred, choroidal. I don't know if I was trying to say toroidal. I'm not sure. I didn't look up that word, if that's even a word. But it was like this was like a creation level event here. What was happening? That's the pattern here, as if this energy has this impact and it moves on, but then it's a cycle. It just happens again. And I had movement of spheres into realms of existence. And here it is: reality, thought forms, baseline, existence, fundamental, existential. And rather saying it is some kind of energy. I mean, we don't know what this other dimensionality is. So maybe it's some kind of program that carries this data and this information, and we can interpret that as a thought form. Maybe I'm just guessing, trying to justify that data, but
Mm-hmm.
and then I had this planetary chaos theory, mechanical and digital. I saw what I interpreted as a planetary body. And behind it, if you remember, I guess back in when Jurassic Park first came out, they talked about chaos theory. And you saw that one big drawing. It's a horrible rendition of it, but I had a planet with an aura, and then like the chaos theory behind it. And then again, I had these tendrils coming out of it as if it was somehow connected,
Mm-hmm.
almost like a darkened Earth or planetoid spherical object with vertical protrusions. Behind the object looms a shape that resembles the chaos theory drawing, lots of geometrical shapes and patterns with this target. So that was my first session. I think, again, getting ideas of, I say, energy, and these structures, and maybe even a planetary impact here. Any
Mm-hmm.
thoughts or comments on that one before I move on, Darby?
Well, part of what I do when I review the sessions, of course, is I'm referencing my knowledge of the law of one material, where this idea for the tasking came from. The beginning of your session, you described this kind of an energetic barrier. I think it was almost spherical or curved, and you kind of bounced off of it. And when I read that, I immediately thought of the in the law of one material. They say that the Council of Nine, one of the things they do, in addition to um, guiding the spiritual evolution of Earth, and I'm supposing other planets in the solar system, is they protect the Earth. So, and the way apparently this protection occurs, according to the law of one material, is there is some type of a protective energetic grid that overlays the Earth,
Mm.
and it's supposed to basically prevent uh, outside forces from going into the Earth, because the Earth, they want to preserve the Earth as a free will place to be able to make some choices in the classroom, so to speak. So I immediately thought of that. But of course, then as you go further in your session, that form, that toroidal form that you drew, that seemed to have a barrier, it almost goes from macro to micro, where you
Yeah.
have that man overlaid, and so it appears to be almost like some sort of a spiritual or transformative process that this symbolic man is undergoing. So maybe we're looking at a micro and macro process there. Um,
I think that one is related to the other, the micro and the macro, and I think we're connected to that. And it definitely, and this is just my opinion, but I'd say it would impact us. And I even labeled that last drawing as an AOL. I said, because could it be a nucleus? Because I did struggle with size and scale on this. Is this something very big, or is this something very small, or am I seeing elements of both? Because it's such a vast element of possibilities there.
mhm.
That's neat feedback. Thank you for that.
And then you had that big glowing orb, which again, that might be just another way of looking at whatever that toroidal form was.
The yellow
Um,
one.
yeah, but I also wondered uh, you know, I was hoping or thinking that we might be getting some data related to Saturn because supposedly the headquarters of the Council of Nine is in Saturn. So Saturn,
Oh,
of course, is a huge gas giant that's
yeah,
very, glows. So I thought we possibly could be related to that as well, but we don't know. But
yeah,
it's interesting matching the data with the quote unquote feedback we have. Of course, the
yeah,
feedback we have is there's no way to verify that either because it's all channeled material. So, but
yeah.
it's interesting to theorize.
But if it corroborates with the channel material, at least we can say we're validating what was channeled, not
Mm,
necessarily whether that's accurate or not. But
right.
that's pretty cool. Well, here's my second session, and I had some movements, and I think this is where I started. Um, I was afraid to front load myself,
Mm-hmm.
so I think I started this session without looking at that tasking. I think I just went
Mm-hmm.
into my session, and then I think I reached a certain point where I said, "Okay, now I'm going to look at the retasks." I wanted to get myself going. One of these sessions is when I started doing that. It might be this one,
I
and
think
then
it
I came
was. Yeah.
back and reviewed what it was, and then I tried to hit those points. But I wanted to get the data before I looked at it, and then had my imagination start running wild. I was very afraid of that, of my imagination taking over. So whenever I got a retask, I tried not to look at it until I'm right there in the session to
Mm-hmm.
minimize my brain from going. So you wanted me to look at more data from my object moving through space, the row of cards. You wanted me to look more into that. Um, Shakes with the energetic streak above them, so the life forms looking up at the borealis. Movements of energy. You wanted me to explore more. The wave-like pattern and the creation. I think that was my stage 5. Yeah, movement of spheres into realms of existence. So you wanted me to look more into basically the energetics here. So here we go. I was feeling good, relaxed, ready to go. And before I even got started, I was feeling just rushing, moving, whirling, emotional, and excitement, like a roller coaster, starburst, or sunburst. And that was before I even got into the session. And I stopped right away. I had to take a break before I even started the session. I felt too much too early on in the
Mm.
session. But then I came right back to an object, low level, streak, burst, shaking, vibrating movement through space, and through space and time was important. This thing moves through space and time. Elastic, stretchy as a compound. I had an AOL of data, original, focused, confused, alleged, whirly, movement, motion, complex, algorithmic, function, system, systemic of origin, systemic, expansive, global, intrusive. So back on that theme again of global here. This almost feels, now that I'm reading the data, my analytical mind saying this almost sounds like some kind of programming here. And I just got an AI that this just felt so complex. Organism, organization, organic, original, structure, structural, tiered, leveled, intrusive. And that I think ties into some of the previous drawings I had with that big heart or structure. It was organized, point of origin, original, origination. And then I had bright or bright point. And again, star and star system, funnel, focus, trajectory, a project. I felt curious. I had wanderer, optimal position, and sketch and describe. And I had this sketch here, the compass, needle, space, time, and again, wayfinder, which felt to me like an explorer. And the ripple or the ripple effect, impact, trajectory, movement, origin, hard, focused, concentrated, shell or shell like, balanced, incorporated, of corporeal, of the body, which is something I've never gotten before, and a life form. So that's all from probing A. So if you reduce it down again, I've got something I'm identifying as a body or a life form, and then looks like energetics or waves coming out. And more on A, tones, incantations, movement through space and time. And then my B point here, I was labeling this rod or this vertical piece right here at the top. And what I got off of that was intense vibration. I didn't like it. It was wavy but solid, triangle or pyramid connection. It dealt with protection, security from the last session. So whatever that grid was that we just talked about, it felt like that. And then looking at C, what am I experiencing outside of this drawing here? That's what C area is. It was a whooshing sound, lots of movement and energetics, and it felt crystalline as an AOL. So I wanted to move to and describe the point of origin. It was a star seed, star child, life. And I went to point of origin. I started here at present time and I went to point of origin. And as I probed this, I felt this was in the past, in existence, a realm, spheres. Was it a realm of spheres? I'm not too familiar with the realm of spheres. I know when I interviewed Edward Reardon on my podcast after his pie session, he was talking about a realm of spheres, but I can't remember what that was.
For some reason, it makes me think of the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life system, which is comprised of different spheres. And
Yeah. And
um,
I think those are all elements of the same story. I
mm,
think they're all connected. Speaking of which, I had concentric circles, rings, origins. Here we go, connected, um, forming sacred geometry, moving through space and time. Wow, this is fascinating. And I had an AOL of a ship. And here is my first attempt. I had solar sail, wind, but I had these just circles in space. And I looked at it from a different angle here, movement through space and time. And I had this AOL, reminded me of a ship animation. I wrote here from the Gene Roddenberry production. We did a target where we looked at the inspiration for Star Trek. Where did Gene Roddenberry get his ideas? That was a fascinating session. That I didn't work that target. I interviewed and debriefed the briefers on that one, but it was looking at this higher consciousness that planted ideas into the minds of into Gene Roddenberry's mind for Star Trek. So as I did the graphics for that one, I had this starship flying through space that I found online, and that reminded me of what I was seeing here, just this advanced ship. And that's what I was trying to draw here.
well, yeah, Gene Roddenberry. It's not mentioned in the Law of One material, but as part of the feedback documents I sent to you, I believe that the channeling work that was done by Phyllis Schlemmer and Andrika Polarich. I'm probably not saying his name right, but there was another trio of individuals that supposedly channeled the Council of Nine, and Gene Roddenberry was apparently actually attended some of those channeling sessions and interacted with the nine that
Wow,
Phyllis Schlemmer was channeling. So it certainly ties in here in a couple of different ways.
that's really cool. Is that a Star Trek shirt you have on now? Is that what I
It
see?
is a Star Trek, yeah. My favorite sweatshirt happens to be
that's
Star Trek.
that's pretty cool. All right. Well, here I go again. I switched my drawing now. I put my point of origin in the past and then the target that I was working to the right hand side, just so I get it a little more logical for me. And I wrote target at the time of tasking, and I had to give myself a note here. I wrote we won, but it should be we want to go here. We must, but the message I got right away was we must understand the present in order to access or comprehend the past. It's complicated, a complex set of movements and organization. And I think that's important. And, I'll think of that for a while. Understanding the present in order to access or comprehend the past. Who are we? Where are we? What are we? I think, and maybe that also relates to we need to understand where and when we are in order to understand where we want to go. And then I had the AOL of mitosis, which I believe is a form of cellular division. And then I had, here's where I'm starting to get these pods here: warm, smooth, cool sphere. And this is where they swung back and forth. And I had suspended animation. It reminded me of a foosball table. But I remember seeing this, and it was like looking at these pods in some kind of larger structure.
So Naeem has a drawing that is very, very similar to that, and I believe he describes the pods as possibly bodies that are being manufactured, sort of like empty vessels. When you get a chance, check out one of his. I think it's in his second session, but he called that out during our interview about how
Yeah.
similar that drawing was with yours, and indeed it is. It's almost a dead ringer.
And I think I even go into that later too with bodies or a body in there.
Hmm.
And at one point, I think I even wrote down matrix. It had like a matrix pod
Hmm.
feel to it. It always makes me a little uneasy. All right. So again, organs, organelles, mitochondria. This is all the stuff, making up a body. These are all things that are in your cells. Organelles exist in the cell. Mitochondria exists in the cell. It's your powerhouse. Habsburg principle. I looked it up. I forget what that is. It's something from history. I don't think it's relevant.
I looked it
Uh,
up too, and it actually comes up several times in your sessions, at least in this one,
yeah,
possibly another one. And I looked it up, and basically what it means is there's a historic family called the Habsburgs who I believe are some kind of royalty, but I think it has something to do with basically securing your territory, possibly ever expansion of your territory, holding on to it. You're wanting to expand and uh, almost conquer, if I remember
yeah.
when I was reading it. But it definitely, when I read about the Habsburg principle, I didn't walk away thinking, oh, what a great group of people. That's the way I want to live my life. It was kind of a negative connotation with
So that's a
conquering,
yeah.
basically.
That's an AOL. I guess comparing maybe what this project is a part of. Maybe. Wow, interesting. Thank you for that. Just another AOL service pods and origins. And here we go. Micro and macro could be cells and DNA, could be a starship. And then again, I think I was queuing in on both, and I just had to take a break. My breaks are quick, but and here we go. Looking right into the pod here.
Hmm.
Um, they had translucent skin, which I think is just a normal part of production or of creation of life anyway. At one point, the skin's pretty translucent, and I probed here. I probed A, which was the head of this being here, and then B, the environment around it. So it was life development, was underdeveloped, travel. It was in the travel stage, implant, intentional, worm-like, and AOL the fetus. It was, and the A, the brain, just mushy, and B around it was liquid or warmth. And there's my AOL of matrix pods. Okay. Move to data actual from set. Now, this is where I looked at your tasking right here. So I looked at the actual data from session 1, page 14, and describe. So I had streak, movement, energetics, burst or berm, star or sunbeam, translucent. Again, back to the energy wave. This is beautiful. Love, warmth, compassion, a gift. And then the rolling energy flowing like ocean waves. Looking up better. Let me shrink my screen. We can see the whole thing. And it looked like just mountains in the background here. It felt silent and serene, night sky, structures in the distance. It's weird though, as I'm reliving this and experiencing this, I'm picturing myself standing down looking at this. And it just has that moment of this is so beautiful, but knowing that this major change is coming from this. It's terrifying at the same time, not in a panicked way, just maybe of the unknown, but it was just a powerful experience. I felt like I was watching it from below. Here we go. That's exactly what I thought. Sense of awe and wonder, but also a feeling of apocalyptic change that scares me, yet doesn't surprise me. It brings fundamental change. Was it expected? And a sense of sadness, but a knowing that it's either necessary or can't be stopped. So it was just like, this is coming. I can't stop it. I'm in this now.
Hmm.
Um, but there was something peaceful here too. I don't know. I mean, I've watched so many dystopian future movies too, but it was just that moment of acceptance. Like, this is it. This is what's happening. And I took a break because that was pretty heavy. And just 2 minutes, and then boom, right back to it. There's that structure, and there's that energy again,
Hmm.
as if the energy is funneled from a wide area above this target or object, and then the energy was radiating outwards. It felt beautiful, but I said only because I'm at a distance. I don't think I'd want to be up close to this. Is it a solar storm, radiation, electrolyte, electronic, destruction, destructive energy, light therapy, or radiation? So I'm getting this dualistic theme here as I get into in later sessions, where it's destructive, but here I have a feeling of light therapy. So maybe there's some healing aspects to it too. So again, follow energy to its point of origin and describe. It was dark, dense, thick, agitated, stressed, confused. I had singularity, aware or awareness. And then back to that Da Vinci sketch, life form, articulate. And it was like the energy was hitting this person and then just exploding through all these other points. And this reminded me, if you've ever seen The Fifth Element,
Right.
at the very end when Lilu, played by Mila Jovovich, the weapon is activated and she goes like this, and light just comes out of her from everywhere.
Hmm.
That's kind of what this reminded me of. But I remember this male figure was feeling stressed, screaming, echoing. It was high pitched sounds, as if he throws his head back and energy shoots out of him in all directions, as a form of creation. And this is important. So there was something, this had something to do with a creative process. And I looked at the word creation: start, juncture, ominous, nefarious, journey, journeyman, origin, importance, beginning, significance, and journey. And I get the theme of just creation isn't always this beautiful process. Sometimes it's destructive, sometimes it's hard. It doesn't mean it's bad or good. From our perspective, it might feel bad or good, but it's just creation. Now, looking at the origins: star, starborn, energetics, energize, and again, creation. Beginning, new beginnings, start again, do over. This has been done before. And then I just got this like, oh my God, it's a cycle, it's repetitive. So this just happens and happens and happens. Okay. And I looked at this word intrusive. Let me reduce this because there's now I'm starting to get this dualistic feel to it.
Hmm.
So we look at who the and I remember this. I wrote down the data first, and then I felt compelled because the data felt so different to label them. So I got the data first, top and bottom, and then that's when I labeled what they were. So the one up top, I ended up calling it the intruder. They were let me that's instant is that incidental?
I think it's
Intentional.
intentional. Yeah.
Intentional. Thank you. I can't read my own writing. Intentional. Natural for the intruder, meaning it's just a natural thing that the intruder does. Gentrification, help, enlightening, and change. So I think they're bringing about this change. There's my Habsburg's AOL again. The intruded. It's invasive. It's not natural. It's intentional. It's a process. Seeding, seedling, new life, rebirth, born again. So I think there's this change that goes on. Just a rough interpretation. I mean, that happens just when you're on this journey trying to, in search for truth as a truth seeker, looking for knowledge. I think information has a stronger impact on our consciousness and our being more so than we realize. I think something starts to change in us. Maybe that's what I'm seeing here. Born again so that we shall live. I mean, I could take that into so many deep, dark ways. I'll defer to your commentary, Darby, if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's so many things in your session that either correspond with other viewer sessions or that I could easily say, well, that reminds me of something in the Law of One material. For instance, with the born again, so we shall live, and your this some type of energetic wave or something that's coming
Right.
towards you that seems destructive and yet inevitable and possibly necessary for some type of change or a new creation. That all reminds me of the transition to from third to fourth density that is in the Law of One material. The idea that we're currently living on a third density planet, but it's moving to fourth density, and there's going to be a graduation or a harvest, which the Council of Nine is overseeing, as well as other beings, and that this process will, I think, in the Law of One material, the Ra says it will be fetched with some inconvenience, and they're talking about earth changes and things
Yeah.
that are sometimes a part of this transition. So it might there might be some destruction and some inconvenience, but it's part of the transition from this third to the fourth density consciousness or awareness or dimension.
Wow.
And then, of course, your pods, your fetus-like looking
Mm-hmm.
things and pods. Naeem had very similar data. He and I talked a little bit about what that could be and how that could play into the Council of Nine. Um, yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah. Wow. Curious about that. It's so sci-fi, and to think, is this really happening? And it's I think when you start studying this stuff, it's like you're straddling two realities. You have the normal sane world, you go to work every day, and it's like, no way that stuff's real. And then you get to be a part of things and conversations like this and projects like this, and you're like, oh my gosh, you're trying to balance two totally different realities. It's amazing.
And your intruders and the intruded, it kind of, in Naeem's data, there seemed to be a group of detached scientist-like people who
Mhm.
basically were experimenting on test subjects, and the purpose seemed to be the creation of some type of body or
Mhm.
vessel which had some purpose. They were kind of on display, like your pods. They were all lined up. And we talked about, you know, how our scientists working with their test subjects, lab animals, how these scientists in the session data, which I'm presuming they're not human. Naeem
Yeah.
definitely got data that they indicated they weren't human. They might look at us as lab animals
Yeah.
in a sense, but it's all for some type of a higher purpose. And so I wonder if that intruded is more data related to this group or subgroup of entities that are
Yeah.
working with us for a purpose that has in mind possibly um, our evolution or our next stage of existence where we're going,
Yeah.
but we may not always perceive that as being a positive thing from
Yeah.
our vantage point as the lab animal, so to speak.
Yeah, I think about that a lot, especially after our Roswell project. And I mean, these two projects could be related for all we know, um, with the tech piece. But as human 2.0 or whatever we are, I don't want to go to human 3.0 or 4.0 because that change feels catastrophic to who I am. It's
Hmm.
scary, it's unknown. But I do always think in a lot of the future targets we've worked, that version of human, they're not going to care. They're going to be happy. They're going to be better off. They're going to be, but that's something different from us. At least that's my hope. But, we're losing, I think that we're losing something as we go through this change. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. It's just me wanting to hold on to my perception of my own identity and self. It
Hmm.
scares me, that
Hmm.
change, you know.
Yeah,
Let's
that's
look at, I was going to put up my third session here, 3 of 5. Let's take a look here. All right, here we have it. This was your tasking, and again, I'm pretty sure I waited until I got into my session to put this to look at your retasking, your movements here.
hmm
But you wanted me to explore intrusive, intruded, and intruders, just describing more about that. The moving energy that was apocalyptic. My perspective on the moving energy being a gift. How is it a gift? How could the recipients of this gift or the energy wave utilize it to benefit themselves? We looked at origins, beginning, new beginning, start over, do over. You want me to explore that a little bit more, about the repeating cycle. I sketched a life form on 23, described as articulate, stressed, male, and screaming. Be interested in getting more information about that life form. Can you study the life form in greater depth for more information as to his inner and outer life? I wonder if this is where I start getting my abduction stuff. I felt good. My thoughts were racing. Here we go. I read the first start of the I did read the first part of the retasking here. Okay. So I started thinking about abduction and I was trying to clear myself and ground myself. That's why I try not to
hmm
read them. Um, and then I think I stopped reading it. But here's my initial AOL. I had a ship or a craft, energetics, movement, discharge, resilient, expectorant, release, compulsory, pain, and agony. This is all just in my head. I'm trying to clear it before I start my session. Now I get into my stage 1 here. Looking at another structure, foreign, descent, heavy, electric humming, churning, technological, buzzing, and that as an AOL says alien. Structure, orbital, expanding, range, foraging, searching, finding. It felt curious and inquisitive. And then I had movement from left to right. And it's interesting, some of the early raw material I was listening to, like the intro, they were talking about UFOs and their impact on the planet stuff, just to give a background, and I think to prepare people for the material.
hmm
Um, so I had this craft in the air with light or energy coming out of it and the movement it was going. Then I saw a face. When I probed here in A, I saw the close up of a face. And I sketched it. They were nervous, eyes racing. They were tired, fatigued, exhausted, but calm, sedated, tempting, elusive, alluring, incorporating, I underlined, inclusive, joining or conjoining, framing, controlling, shaping, and guiding. Energy at the heart, calm. This calms the mind, it sedates it. an access point, like two energies at once, fear and calm. And I felt that the access point, I guess, was the heart chakra. So he was naturally experiencing fear, but there was a calming energy through his heart that was calming him down.
Hmm.
I heard metal pinging or hollow sounds, open, expansive, warm. And I started getting these AOLs of Travis Walton. I had an AI of wow. And I saw this arm. I had this AOL of research, this technological arm that curves up and over. It was exploratory, suggestive, the power of suggestion. I can see it. Optics, the power of optics. And it just felt like this long arm that just came up and just kind of looked around. And then I was getting this layers downwards, scanning downwards. I think this is what it was seeing: exploring, exploratory, fissure, compression. I heard technology and bubbly sounds. It was uncomfortable and it was scary and it felt like an exam. And this may be this sketch here. I got to look at what A and B are, but this may be a body, a human body or a life form, that what it looks like through the scanner. If I remember correctly, let me see. Pulse, movement, tube structure, stable, secure, fastened. I see a face again, but it was different. Male, bearded, reflective glasses, calm and in control. He felt military. Green bomber jacket. Was he a general, a major, officer type? He was in control, but I didn't like him. He felt fake. He was focused, but hollow, empty, meaning spiritually. He didn't have any spirituality or remorse. He thinks highly of himself, enjoys his own perceived self-importance. He was short-sighted. He was thin, but he was fit. I felt third eye pressure, restricted, stabilized. Again, intrusive, exploratory, endoscopic, and exoscopic, something with scope. And then I had an AOL, mantid abduction, conscious mind. I wrote that because I started getting memories, not memories, but things I've read and heard about my labs, the military abductions. And there's a lot of stories of mantis and military scientists. So just trying to clear that idea and get it out to get back to
Naeem
the
ha-
data.
Naeem
Go
had
ahead.
a mantis figure in his
Oh,
session that he actually drew. Was one of the beings that showed up in his data.
great. So maybe that's really what I was picking up on. I was afraid it was my imagination. I've never done a session where I've encountered a mantis. I don't have a ton of sessions under my belt of this nature, but I think I got intimidated by that data then. I moved on to your taskings here that describe the gift of the energy waveform in the previous session. I felt that this was painful. There was growth, but screaming, hurt, sorrow, love, kind, compassion, download, like a digital download. The energy wave gift in stage 4 was confronting digital aspect ratio, 1 to 1, 1 to 2 scale, scaling, growth. This is important. Spiritual growth, pain as a substance, movement, energy, energetics. Wow, there's a lot of energetics here. Fear, scared, remorseful, a woman crying. She was just saying, please make it stop. And I felt sad for her. Describe the cause of their emotions: stress and danger and frustration, anxiety, lust, sinfulness, as in behavior, sad, intrusive. And this felt as if thoughts, invasive, pervasive, not fair, unkind, unjust, which is strange because I know what I was listening to before with the raw material. And again, I haven't gotten through all of it, but they were talking about we won't intentionally put these thoughts in your head. You have to open yourself up to it. So I don't know if there's a connection to that there or not.
Well, Ra is definitely about free will.
Yeah.
They pretty much won't answer a question unless you ask the question specifically for
Yeah.
what you want.
Yeah.
Can you
Sure.
talk about the? Someone will say, "Can you talk about this, Ra?" Yes, we can. Will you talk about this?
Yes, we will. Okay. That I mean, but when I think about that, and I look at what Daz just published. I interviewed Daz with his Moon project, and Tunde had a project with that as well. I haven't gotten through all of it yet. That Naeem was a part of, and they were looking at what Ingo encountered on the Moon, and it was like this giant AI that answers. That's a learning tool,
Hmm.
and that literal yes, I can. I just wonder if we're dealing with, and this is my own bias here, some kind of AI query machine, which I feel like remote viewing is too. If you ask the right question, you'll get an answer that just, it reminds me of, if you've ever seen I, Robot with Will Smith. At the very end, he asks, the creator, a certain question. He goes, "My responses are limited. You have to ask the right question in a specific way." That's kind of what it sounds like to me.
Well, Daz, in his data, both Daz and Curl describe an object that looks a lot like the Ark of the Covenant. And in Daz's data, he gets data indicating that the object is actually artificial intelligence, that it's aware of people around it, that it will subtly help people that it perceives as not that it perceives as being benign in some way, not out to use it for their
Right.
own ends. It also makes me think of in the Law of One material, there's a little section where I can't remember the exact context, but they're talking about some type of AI, some type of technology that answers people's prayers, answers people's questions. And the reason that the technology was implemented is that humans will typically ask the same thing over and over again. And they'll be
Hmm.
given instructions like, well, you need to meditate more to be able to
Right.
understand more. But they don't meditate more. They'll just keep kind of staying at the same level of growth. And in the raw material, they said, so what they did is they installed this technology which is available to answer these lower level questions on call so
Yeah.
that the actual uh, living entities can be available for the more advanced students that have more advanced questions. So uh, that's definitely some type of AI technology or
Yeah.
question answering technology that is talked about in the Law of One material briefly.
When you think about Google and you start typing into Google and it brings up the most common questions that are asked and starts giving you answers already based on, really, it's your thought to your fingers to your keyboard, but it's just taking that one step out. If we are able to link the mind to the AI, it
Mm,
would automatically, I mean, that's not that far fetched of an idea right now, where we look at where we're at with tech today and where they're projecting it's going.
hmm
That's really cool. So I looked at if this was a gift, and I got turmoil and struggle, but growth. And you really can't grow without turmoil and struggle. So again, in my opinion, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just hard. Um, Aspects of reality. Now here we have caged and entanglement. I want to describe the cycle from the previous session. It was a process, a procedure. It's been done before, a cycle of growth and rebirth, regeneration, rejoice, happiness. I feel jubilation. That's a word I don't use. Celebration, arrival into one's own. This is species wide, the growing of a crop, but that crop is a civilization, an emergence, gratitude, coming into one's own as a collective, a joining or conjoining, becoming members of a society, a new connection. Is that what that says? Yes. This is the gift, but the price is the death of the old, the birth of the new. It's a very painful process, destructive but empowering, almost sadistic in nature, and in certain stages it is. That is a stage of this process, the sadists. And I felt like it's kind of where we are now. And when I say now, I mean spanning a pretty long time. But if we look throughout history, and even where we're at now, you got some pretty sadistic people that do some pretty horrible things. And I've thought about this a lot. As much like, why is there suffering in the world? And it seems terrible, it seems horrible, but if we never felt challenged, would we ever feel compelled to grow? And I just, the sense that I got was these sadists, these sadistic things that happen, they're bad from our perspective. They're not good, but that doesn't mean they're not necessary for this type of growth.
mm.
It's just my side note on that. But
And of course, a lot of that paragraph there you wrote is straight out of the Law of One. The idea of a crop or something
really,
for harvest. I don't think you used the word harvest, but you had some type of a crop
yeah,
and a civilization joining something larger. Of course, the harvest is a term it's used a lot in the raw material. The crop, of course, is what would be harvested. We would be the crop, a group of beings going through third
yep,
density, graduating to fourth,
that's
and be.
interesting. And I definitely had that feel. I try to stay away from those terms in my sessions just because of the last book that I wrote was all about harvesting human energy. So I always worry, am I getting into my own bias, my own imagination?
Mm-hmm.
So I try to describe, other aspects of it just because I don't want to get trapped in that. But that's very curious. Thank you for sharing that. Here we go, looking at the sadists a little bit more, my stage 5. Um, I'll go down for because I usually go down first and then I do the top part. And then I've changed how I do this anyway since here. But technical growth, hormonal, necessary, encampment, stationary, destructive, emotional, satirical, flat, encompassing, designed, controlled, necessary, worrisome, concerning. But we can see past them to the calming phase. And that came to me when I was done writing this. So it's like, okay, sadists, this is bad. They're creating all this turmoil and chaos, even though it's necessary. But I guess my point was there's an end in sight. There's another phase that's a little bit more calming than the sadistic phase. So I looked at calming and I got here resting, nurturing, breathing is slower, reflecting. This is where the growth happens. So it's like that phase you go through the hard thing and then you reflect on it. You learn to meditate and things kind of process through you. You get the information, but then it takes you a long time to understand it. Going up now, fluctuating mixing of emotions, turmoil, confusion, sadness, rage, anger, compulsion, fusion, mixing, and then the healing, wrangling, corralling. And then fading, failing, falling, destroying, and repeating. And I just had cycles within cycles, almost reminded me like some of the Mayan stuff. Spiritual growth. There is something greater, divine caring. And then I had an AI. I felt love and pain and ebb and flow. And then I tried to get a concept of these cycles here. So we had the birthing stage, beginning, establishing, growing, compounding, curiosity, it reaches its precipice. So, this civilization, they're growing, they're becoming established, and they get so curious. And then we come to stage 2, which was your advancement stage with growth. And then stage 3 was your sadists. And then stage 4, you had your common and healing. A lot of death to get here. Is it my own or others? Is that the cycle? My own process, pyramid of spheres. And I had die, many deaths, and an AOL of skulls. And I was asking here, when I was saying, is it my own or is it others? Meaning, is this a collective cycle or is this what one soul goes through on a repetitive journey? Do I go through this process of death and rebirth, or is this civilization wide? Many people die over a progression of time, and I think maybe it's both.
Right.
If I can guess there, but I almost had and I didn't write it, but like a reincarnation feeling. Like I die, I go through the pain, my soul absorbs, or my consciousness, whatever we want to call it, learns something and then processes it in the next life and moves on until it advances.
Mm-hmm.
Back into stage 4 here, continued from page 18, the ebb and flow, like this was cool, like the respirations of the universe. I had an AOL of the Kali Yuga, which I think is a span of time in the Vedic texts, if memory serves. And there's a lot more to it. I completely reduced it, but contracting and restricting like a living being. It was beautiful. It was love. So I was looking at a large scale. Is this God, an overlord? And then this was really cool. It was powerful, but small as well, as in it's still learning and evolving. So I'm wondering if this is Ra. And this is totally me guessing here after this fact now. But what was very clear to me is whatever this powerful overlord was, from my perspective, it seems powerful, but it is growing just like I am. There's something greater than it, is what I took away from that
Well,
process.
it reminds me of the concept of logos that they describe in the law of one material. So a logos would be something like there's God, right? But then God creates the universe to know itself, and
Uh-huh.
so a galaxy would be an individuated portion of God,
Mm-hmm.
which would be called a logos. With galaxies, there's solar systems in the galaxies, which would be sub logos. The
Yeah.
sun would be a sub logos, and we would be a sub logos. And I'm wondering if what you're picking up is one of these, individuated aspects of God, like a galaxy or
Yeah.
like a solar system that is has some level of God consciousness, but isn't the whole the whole shebang, so to speak.
Reminds me of a few things. Tom Campbell talks about, he's the NASA physicist who does a lot of out of body stuff. He wrote The Theory of Everything. And in his fireside chats, he talks about individuated units of consciousness that he explores. And it reminds me of that. But it also reminds me of the Gnostic texts talking about the aeons. And basically you have this, you call it the source or whatever, and then it breaks down into, your higher level aeon, and then it wants to understand itself and it separates, but it actually creates within itself. So they're basically these conscious entities that exist within themselves, like Russian dolls, just
Mm,
universes within universes and within universes. It's a pretty neat concept. So that makes sense what you're saying too. It ties into that,
mm-hmm.
I think. And again, I think we're getting the same story through just many different lenses,
Right.
culturally interpreting, the same story. I have oneness, unity, universal connection. We're all related to this universal ebb and flow, the cosmic breath or respiration, the respiratory cycle. Together, we are all part of the whole, cosmic, joyous, universal life force, common language. I think that's an important piece, common language. It's not English. I think it's an intuitive language, whatever that may be. Describe the life form from page 23 in the previous session. I just got bullshit. The whole story you gave me is a beautiful distraction, and I see through it. Anger, deceit, lies. You lied to me, confused, sad, empowered. Why is this happening to me? I'm wondering if that life form was just angry and he's not buying into it because I'm going through all these horrible things and you're lying to me. I don't believe you.
Hmm.
Or is this data telling me that everything I just told you is bullshit and it's all a lie? I don't know. That's just what the
Mm-hmm.
data says. So that's open to interpretation. But the tasking, the queuing for that was, what is that life form's perception? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go with that for now. Describe the life form: scared, angry, frozen with fear, naked, restrained, paralyzed, technologically. With the word naked here, that could be naked as in the nude, but I also have referred to naked through the Gnostic lens of meaning ignorance, not understanding your greater reality. So that
Mm-hmm.
naked could mean ignorant, could mean naked without clothing. Um, Beard, teeth, breath smells, exhaustion. And again, I had this Travis Walton idea. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking at this abduction. I just had a person on a table, it looked like. Head was rocking left to right, had an AL of an abduction. I was trying to clear that out. Moved to 1 hour before this event and described the light form. They were calm, smiling, happy, heartfelt. I liked this guy. Maybe a social gathering or a party, family. He was a father figure. Heartfelt, joyous, emotional, normal, average, doesn't recognize his own importance or role. He was content and happy, just an average guy. And then here, that arm came back to me. That arm that was looking at him
Mm-hmm.
just came back. And then I got someone close is watching from behind. And that was the end of that session. We're getting into some kind of creepy abduction stuff. Any
Mm-hmm.
thoughts or comments on that one, Darby?
Well, your abduction like data at the end there, it does look a lot like Naeem's data of an individual restrained on a table, struggling, not having a good time, and
Yeah.
those detached scientist like non-humans doing experiments in the process of designing some type of vehicle, a body vehicle.
Yeah. I wonder if that's connected to that sadist stage, because it would seem very sadistic to us, the same way we would be with lab animals in our
Mm-hmm.
experiments. And maybe that's part of that piece of growth here collectively.
Well, what we Naeem and I talked a little bit about was if we assume this is all correlated with the Council of Nine data, we talked about, well, why would they need these bodies? Why would they need to be designing these bodies in these experiments? And one of the things we talked about is, well, if we are as a human race transitioning from third to fourth density, and the law of one data, they basically say that there are people who don't graduate, who don't make the cut and have to retake third density class. They can't do it on Earth. because
Hmm.
Earth isn't going to be conducive to third density life forms. So they're going to have to move to a different planet, presumably. And if they have to move, they're probably going to need a different type of body, something that is maybe more conducive to whatever that other third density planet is like. And one of the things that the Council of Nine is supposedly responsible for or oversees is the movement of civilizations from one planet to another,
Wow.
whether it's some type of a transition from third to fourth, like we're going through, or maybe the race destroys their planet. Like
Hmm.
supposedly there was a planet called Maldek that got blown up. That race had to be relocated to different bodies to continue their incarnational journeys. Same thing with Mars. Supposedly, Mars was made uninhabitable, and that civilization again had to move, in this case, to Earth to be
Yeah.
able to continue their class, their classroom, and to do so, they required some genetic adjustments. And so maybe that's what we're viewing here is the preparation of some new bodies for humanity's transition to the next to their next step of evolution, or a retaking of the third density classroom.
Wow, that's a
Those
neat
who
way
don't
to
make the
explain
cut.
it. That's really cool. And I'm also thinking of Dr. Jacobson's work on the hybrid program too, if that's what we're seeing as
Hmm.
well. Changing it to hold a new frequency. But that's fascinating about because that would make sense with the Starship data um, that I had here, transporting all these bodies that are prepared for. It's also the end of spoiler alert if you've ever seen The Knowing with Nicolas Cage. It's an older movie.
I
Nope.
did see it. I can't
Okay.
recall.
It's I'd say it'd be worth revisiting now
Yeah.
after going through these sessions. It'd be worth watching again. It's pretty neat to watch that now, especially with the lens of like an intuitive and a remote viewer and looking at this stuff. Might be
Hmm.
cool to watch. Let me bring up my fourth session. I have two more sessions to go through. Here's our tasking on page 16 of the last session. I had adjoining or conjoining, becoming members of a society, a new connection. Get more data regarding this society that might be interesting. Data that might be interesting could include its objectives, activities, members, worldview, etc. Okay, so starting off right away, before I even got into the session, excuse me, I had a skull or a face, and I had this spinning, swirling, twisting yellow vortex. Just this spinning light, this triangle. In the stage one now, just this structure down, slow moving, hard, sly, slick, tight blockage like a railway is an AOL. But there was outwards pressure. You can see my little sketch there trying to describe what I was feeling. Another ideogram here, looking at an object, AOL of drop. Gasp, shock is what I was feeling. Widening, moving, motion, expanding, rumbling, whistling sound, high pitch, AOL of stone. Oh, these are really big ideograms here. Motion, life, moving, wide, energetics, expansive, open, cool, rumbling, daylight. I had exhaust smells, streaming, moving. And then I had life contained in that ideogram as well. Open, tight, smiling, falling, forming. And the energy felt like it went down, then up. And I had this, oh, this was an interesting feeling. It was like the energy went into this body, hit them down like boom. And then I just had this AI of like, this is powerful. But the energy, it's like it went into the male life lying. I should have said lying horizontal. The
Hmm.
body was limp, but the limbs were extended outward as the energy surges and pours in, as if it enters the chest cavity and runs through the body and limbs, taking hold of a body from within and pulling it upwards as if levitating. Surprise, shock, and awe. So the energy came into the body, and then it's almost as if it had physical properties to grab onto the body from inside and pull it up. And I also wonder if that's connected to the first sessions where I was drawing
Hmm.
the Da Vinci guy with the energy coming out of him. But
Hmm.
this was like physically picking up a body with energy.
And your fifth element, like drawing as
Yes,
well.
yeah, same thing, right? White light, male, long hair. And I saw this face, and it reminded me. Remember Tales from the Crypt when we were kids, the Crypt Keeper? I
Hmm.
kept seeing that face. I was trying to get rid of it, but just sickly, stringy hair, bony and pale. I didn't like this guy. He was creepy looking. I felt distressed. I heard animal sounds as it relates to cattle. So wreckage, and I just wrote the word moo. And I had this drawing here, and it felt like compartments or containers that were filled or occupied, inhabitants. A here, I think I just probed the A part. Open, tin, I had a face shifting from cattle to humanoid. Is it hiding from me? Is it goat like? Tight eyes, holding, hiding, worrying. It's the face I was. So I had this face, and it kept changing as I'm looking at it, like cattle, humanoid, cattle, humanoid. It was morphing. Horrible drawing, but you get the idea. And then I had this sketch here. I don't remember what this was. Like fireballs raining down through a circular structure. I felt like I was off target here. I don't know what that was. So I took a break and then right back to it. And this is cool. I had energy, pressure, physical, and life. So that's this A part here. There's two sides to this energetics, event. One side impacts the other. This is important. So looking at B here, that's this lower side here. I had the recipient, movement, wide, expansive, universe. Wow, this is so big and unexpected was my AI. Like an entire realm is concealed here. So I'm starting to get this two different realms or universes or worlds divided by C. And this is really cool here. C was what did I write? Print, permanent, hard, coiled, majestic, internal, widening, expanding, coiled, range. What's the most important aspect? Before I get to that, I'm going to talk more about this later on in the session, this piece here. But this two worlds where I think what I get into is one aspect is aware and the other aspect is not. I think that's what I get into eventually. So a little teaser there. The most important aspect of this retasking, an AOL of a Jesuit, streaming, streamer, blocked, and nature. And I had cattle. And this cross section was as if I'm looking at a cow's face behind bars, behind a cage. That's what I was trying to sketch here. Trapped, stuck, encamped, fear and fearful.
Let me ask you, do you think we're looking at a metaphorical image here?
That was going to be the
What?
next words out of my mouth. This
Okay.
feels like a metaphor here. Yeah, and I'm reminded of in Courtney Brown's book where he was trying to remote view an abduction, and they kept getting metaphors of like a rodeo of animals and then spectators in the stands watching these animals. It's kind of the feeling that I had here. So now I moved on to the retasking, describing the society from page 16 of the previous session. They were elegant, enhanced, remote, tiered, organized, reflective, and structured. And I had this spinning. Is it a symbol or a gateway or entryway? It's organized, structured, tiered, regimented, calm, peaceful, loving, kind, foreign, strange. Is it earth or earthbound or earth-based? I asked. The tube-like structure with tiers or levels, spinning, rotating, oscillating. Now here's the structure itself. And back to that theme of movement through space and time. There was heat, and I wrote down bored or drilled, which meant I'd say intentionally had these holes put into it, like tubes or tunnels. Society described their worldview. They were scientific, communal, which I felt was important, enhanced, burdensome, hardship. There was scholar or scholarship, they're chosen, encampment, something fictitious I had an AOL of. And I wanted to explore communal a little bit more. So we have public, utility, commodity, sharing, enhancement, enlightenment, sharing, trading, enhanced, special, species, function, functional, common, obedient. Communal almost feels to me Borg-like, a hive mind type of society on some level. An AOL of slaves, AI, gasp. The new society is the commodity being used for something. I don't like this. So the one society was being used by the other one. Let's look at enhanced. Targeted, structured, organized, engineered, genetic, forlorn, prophecy, protected, carnivorous, dangerous, spiritual, spherical, tangential. I can't even say that word. And then I just wrote, I see auras. Oh, this got creepy. I remember this now. So I had these three blobs. Now I had them like eggs or canisters, containers and holders. Oh, I know what this reminds me of. I had the A, B, and C here that I labeled, but there's more here, as if these images are above or connected to something. Feels like a table or platform next to each one. So these things were floating next to these tables. So I'm seeing two images at once: a reptilian being, calm, peaceful, sentient, centennial, I guess, meaning like hundreds of years old, wise, beliefs, bipedal, hands crossed. But the image that I had crossing it was a burning object moving downwards like a craft, re-entry, AOL of Buddha. It's as if there were two things at once contained within that. I'm wondering, does it mean existing in two different realities in two different ways? I don't know. There were different stages of evolution, as if an egg is fertilized via a needle. And then I looked at C, and it was this hard chrysalis. These feel larger compared to human life. Are they somehow connected? A connection to another life? Nurturing, growing, cocooning, spinning. Like they were connected to this human life here. Connection, input, output, pouring, draining, recycling, feeding, and energetics. I feel that this cocoon or pod is getting something out of this human life. And now that I'm looking at this, I remember one of David Icke's books had the drawing of a reptilian being that would plug into the lower chakras of people. Um, as I'm reviewing this data now, that's what it feels like to me. This pod that was cocooning and taking the energy of a person or a being behind it. The word chosen, special, selected, spherical, empirical, necessary, categorize, what did I say? Categorical? Categorical, that's what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Luminary, obsidiary, wasteful, category. Purpose of selection, category, categorize, organize, genetic material, genetic code, enhancement, material, materialistic, access. Here we have petri dish. That's never a good thing. As if the life enhances these things through experience and time or category. So I think we're seeing, like you were talking about Naeem's session, these scientific experiments isolating certain genes and traits and enhancing them. Um, you know, being chosen is sold as being this great thing, but I don't think being the chosen one's always a good thing here. This is, I think, chosen to be enhanced and experimented on through multiple generations. If I had to give my own personal interpretation of that
Mm.
data, any thoughts on that before I move on, Darby?
Uh, you're in this case, you're referring to the reports of some people who experience abductions and
Yeah,
that it travels sometimes down the family line through
yeah,
generations. Yeah.
yep. This is neat here, and I think is relevant to our society today. And as I was listening to some of the raw materials, I think it ties in a little bit. I had these three categories: A, B, and C. They were movement, calm, quiet, morose, obscure, forgettable. And then I felt crown chakra energy and sadness. And as I looked at this a little bit more, I have column A, column B, and column C as they're moving. So A, we had movement and organization of life forms into structures or patterns. Why? They felt mindless. They respond to stimulus. Less conscious. They were your drones or worker bees. So they just go through and they do their job, but they're not really conscious. They're not very spiritual. They're just doing whatever their purpose is to keep society running, is how I felt with this. B, same silly nonsense, male voices in unison, preparing, training soldiers, military calisthenics. So these guys were a little bit more advanced, but they carried out a little bit more militaristic type of orders. And then C is what I really liked. These were wise. They had wisdom. They were your wanderers, your spiritual journeymen. Each one supports the other. There's a connection through society, maybe a subtle awareness. So my own interpretation, again, these are your low-level drones, worker bees, the workforce here of a society. These felt more like your enforcers here who keep that structure. Maybe you're more dogmatic people, and these are your truth seekers, your free thinkers, the ones who are out there looking for more and pondering things and asking questions and maybe disrupting society a little bit. The ones that I would suspect, and this is all my opinion here,
Mm-hmm.
that B would try to keep in line, because these guys, I would think, would break the mold.
Of course, wanderers is the term that's frequently found in the law of one material, refers to an entity that whose native vibration or density is typically a higher density than third density, but they come to Earth in order to help raise the consciousness of the planet as a whole.
Wow. I wasn't aware of that. And I did have earlier session data in like Wayfarer, which for me is like a wanderer, an explorer.
Well, I
That's
think you
really
had
cool.
Wanderer in an earlier
Yeah.
session as well.
Wow. That's cool. What else do I need to know? Work, wise, beauty, realms, aesthetics, pleasing. And then I got codes streamed in to manifest perception of reality. It's the connection that matters. This guy doesn't look too happy getting those codes streamed into his heart chakra, but that was my last glimpse of what I needed to know.
I don't know, he kind of
Uh,
looks blissed out to me.
maybe
Like,
he's
yeah,
high.
man,
Yeah, like hey, this is some good stuff. Maybe,
feeling the
maybe,
love.
hopefully that's what that is.
I wanted to mention in Daz's sessions, one of the main themes is he appears to follow a life form that gets this huge download. There's a lot of downward pouring energy from above, and it's kind of like this transcendent or ascension like experience. And he receives this information that transforms him and sets him on a path of being a teacher and a leader. And it felt very biblical. And some of your data, like the your first session data, where you
Yeah,
got this guy that's like getting the
yeah.
download, and that's it seems very similar to that thread that runs through Daz's session,
Wow.
of which felt like some kind of a historical figure. I just
Yeah,
wanted to mention that.
that's cool. I had Daz work a target for me about a year or two ago. I haven't released it yet. It's supporting one of my writing projects, but it had something similar to the energy coming in and changing somebody and helping them to grow and evolve. So, um, really, I think a lot of these targets we're looking at when we're trying to get to the core of them. I know I've said it multiple times. I think we're tapping into a very similar story of something that is ongoing that happened with the creation of our variation of this species and kind of where we're going with it. It's really neat.
Mm-hmm.
All right, one more session to go, Darby. Let's get into it. All right. This one I wasn't retasked, but I felt I had a little bit more in me that I wanted to go through to get out. Um, I felt pretty good. This was almost 10 o'clock at night, though. I was tired, but I wanted to get this session done and over with. And right away, I got the idea of society. And then I jumped right into my session here. Motion, cyclical, repetitive, dash, churning. AOL of tyrannical. My next ideogram here, I had an AOL of a sonic boom. Life. Harrowing, tight, restricting, pressured, precious, significant, valued, dignified, worthy, valiant. There's that starburst, starborn, and an AOL of a kamikaze again, too. Worried, worrisome, occupied. Another AOL of just a sketch here. Sound, soundboard, sound garden. Again, back to life. And also structure, society, organization, regimented, segmented, compartmentalized, tiered, leveled, hierarchy. Motion, movement, justified, repeating. Again, cyclical, correspondence, escaping. I felt calm. Stage 3, sketch or describe the hierarchy. Oh, this was cool. When did I do this session? Let me run up to the top, see the date of this. Okay, so this was after. Here's where, just full disclosure here. This was shortly after I saw Matrix 4.
Okay.
So I think that's, and I say that because this sketch that I have here, pill form, pill shaped, organized, A and B. But I really think that Matrix is one of those storylines that implants ideas in your mind that if you meditate on them, there's growth that happens there. There's change that happens there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I was still processing some Matrix stuff here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Both the red and blue pill in one. the seen and the hidden, a collective universally, but one aspect is aware, the other is not. But that comes back to that dualistic sketch I drew in the last session here, where the top and the bottom, one was aware and one wasn't. That's where I get into that here. And interconnectedness through consciousness, alert, awake, open, and mystified was the one side of it. And the other side, cold, closed, tubes, tubular, and structures. And if you break it down too, you also have this duality of that black egg-shaped pod with the other person. One was aware, one wasn't. AOL of rockets. So breaking it down to his basic gestalts here, you have these two aspects of something where one seems more aware than the other.
Another thing that keeps coming up as you're talking about these two sides and one being aware and one not being aware. I think of in the law of one material, they talk about the differences between third density, which we're in now, and the fourth density. And third density is very much a veiled, cut off kind of existence where we don't always feel connected to a creator. We don't feel
Yeah.
or have knowledge of our past lives. Typically, we feel cut off, and this inspires us often to look within to try to find those answers, to try to make those connections. And this very veiled state of existence is important in third density because it inspires us, like I said, to move forward, to start to reach up or reach inward to make that spiritual connection. Fourth density does not have that veiling. If you go by what the law of one material talks about, fourth density, the veil is lifted and the connection is obvious, and it's all about what, journeying deeper and deeper into that
Yeah.
connection. So that might be a stretch, taking what your data of the aware and unaware, but certainly makes me think about that as you go
Yeah.
through your data.
No, that sounds highly relevant. I like that connection. I don't think it's a stretch at all. That's really cool. I have another sketch here that I labeled as containers and restrictions, which could be that veil you were just talking about. And I got this image of like a life restricted or restrained, an affordable barrier. It's necessary. And maybe, for in this state, in that third density, we're not ready to know everything yet. I mean, maybe there's a reason why we don't have all that knowledge yet. Describe the overall worldview of this society. Meek, materialistic, dualistic, dualist, binary, survival, efficiency, movement, energetics, wayfaring, traveling, exploring, knowledgeable, knowledge-based, enumerated. This feels different than the other society that I described. So I think I'm looking at the other one now in this part of the session here. What's most interesting aspect of this society as it relates to the tasking? Sinful, playful, reality, compulsory, a life organized, building, structured, organized. And I had this male adult life in the fetal position, piercing, penetrating, but organized. Reinforced, preferred. What's the most common? Describe the most common life of this society. I had male, sunbeam, sunflower, sunblossom, organized, resistant, relief for them. I don't know what that means, relief for them. And then I got this multiple rows of life forms. No hair, skulls, barren, wasteful, strapped in, controlled, regimented, organized, machine. Wow, there's so many. I saw this and it was like looking at it. If you've ever been on a roller coaster, you see everybody strapped in at the roller coaster, it's like a sky view, but it was just rows of these life forms just sitting there. Really neat thing to see, but everybody looked the same. Tall, flat, squat. Again, I get this theme of organized, organizational, religious, hierarchical, order, machines, warehousing, storage. Could this be those cloned bodies you were talking about with
Mm-hmm.
Naeem? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at what organized means because that came up quite a bit. Fantastic, fanatical, facial recognition, detail, wayfinders, search and rescue, destiny. I mean, as you said, maybe the ones that don't make it, that's their rescue. Um, Pungent, foul, relief, rotting, helpful, instrumental, steel. And I could just be way off here too. Calming, cooling. This is what's most interesting. Awareness, life support, forward, sprouting, budding, awareness. I think I'm coming in and out of contact here. Anything else? Future, futuristic, encampment, Escape, run, flee, pry away, winding, narrowing, paving, changing, altering. And that was it. That was my, oh wait, did I have anything else at the end of this? No, that's my fifth and final session there.
Excellent.
What a target.
Well, a collection of data. Thanks so much for putting all the time that you did into this project. You have a bunch of great data,
Thank you.
a bunch of clear correspondences with some of the other viewers' data, as well as additional data, which definitely is further enlightens what we know about this target. And one of the things that I want to ask you, I asked Naeem, your data is somewhat similar to Naeem's in some respects.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to Naeem, now that we've reviewed your sessions, do you think this group of beings that you were reviewing, do you think you'd want to hang out with them? And he definitely didn't. He walked away with sort of a negative view. He wouldn't certainly want to be one of these test subjects that these scientists like beings were experimenting on. You seem to have a little bit more of a mixture of data in your sessions, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering what your overall impression is now of our target now that you've had another chance to go through your data.
I came into this session not knowing and still not knowing a lot about the raw materials and the law of one. I have the book downloaded, but I'm not very far into it. Um, so my initial impressions of this, just hearing other people talk about it, felt very dogmatic and religious and too new agey for my liking.
Hmm.
That's without reading the materials. That's just other people and how they interpret it. Um, Now that I'm going through some of it because of these sessions, I see a lot of common threads with what I'm exploring in my own, things that make sense to me.
Hmm.
Um, so it's reassuring and validating in terms of these beings that I've experienced. Would I want to be one of the test subjects? Absolutely not. Am I
Right.
one of the test subjects? I don't know. There's a lot of common threads that mirror things I've been through in my own life. Um, I don't know how that fits into this story. Maybe that's just me trying to view it through my own lens. I don't know. But I think I had the benefit of seeing this from a lot of different perspectives.
Mm.
So from one perspective, these guys are terrible.
Mm.
But from other perspectives, well, they're just going through their own spiritual growth and advancement. I mean, I had that in the session as well. So
Hmm.
um, I think evil and darkness is a matter of perspective sometimes.
Hmm.
And I think my session data, kind of points to that. Part of it is necessary for the growth if you look at the larger scale of it. But
Hmm.
to answer your question simply, I know I gave a complex answer because I like to go on rants. Um, would I want to hang out with them in the sense of, hey, come do experiments on me? No. But if
Sure.
I had an opportunity to ask questions where no harm was going to come to me, as terrifying as it might be, yeah, I'd love to learn, but I I say that from a state of total ignorance and only if I'm ready to receive that knowledge and it's not going to traumatize me to the point of no return would I want to
Hmm.
do that. But it would be interesting. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, as viewers, I often think as a viewer, the data is the data. All I can do is report on what I got, and I try not to make conclusions about any of it because it's just
Yeah.
often a little snapshot of the whole
Mm-hmm.
picture that we were able to get through however many sessions we did. But it sounds
Mm-hmm.
like what you're saying is your data. It's a mixture of data, and it's subjective. It depends on from
Mm-hmm.
what perspective you're looking at in terms of how you might view the Council of Nine or the other beings that were in your session. So
Yeah. And I think that people who watch this are going to take what's important to them,
sure,
from that data as they go through it.
take what you like and leave the
Yeah,
rest.
like you said at the beginning. That's right.
Right, exactly.
Funny how that comes full circle.
Yeah. Well, Dennis, where can people find more about you? You're involved in, you have a podcast. Of course, you're
Mm-hmm.
involved in cryptoviewing.com. What are some ways that people can find out more about
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
work?
Absolutely. I mean, just Googling me, a bunch of hits come up. But most of my work, I categorize my work through sixthsensemedia.net, and there's links to my YouTube channel. to my podcast. The Secret Podcast is there. You can find me on SoundCloud, on YouTube, and on right now I'm on Spotify as well, and other streaming platforms. Those are the big ones. You can find my books on Amazon, but there's links to my work as well through sixcentsmedia.net. And then, got to plug crypto viewing, patreon.com/crypto viewing, where we just do incredible work every week, looking at um, not just cryptocurrencies, but really the impact on society and kind of where things are going. It's really fascinating to see,
Mm-hmm.
especially when we work in the woo woo stuff once in a while too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep. Yeah, I have listened to one of your podcasts. That it was an interview with a relative of someone that was involved in the Roswell crash. You probably know what I'm talking.
Phil Corso Jr. It was Colonel Corso's son. Colonel
Yeah,
Corso is the one that recovered the Roswell materials and evidence. So I got to speak to his son. That was a really cool interview.
it was a great interview. It was a great podcast episode. So your
Thank you.
podcast is definitely worth checking out.
Appreciate it.
Sure. Well, thanks again for all your work with this project, and I look forward to working with you on some additional Hellfire targets. We have
Yeah.
Anita is doing some tasking for us, so we'll be diving into that.
I saw that. I hope to get to that this week. New one's out. So further down the rabbit hole we go. Let's see where she sends us next, right?
Absolutely.
Great.
All right. We'll talk
All
to
right,
you soon.
Darby. Thanks so much. Take care, buddy.